close with that. I'd be glad to take a couple questions, and absolutely delighted to see the Lynnwood Chamber of Commerce thriving. I hope I can come back again in the future. Any questions? Yes, sir.
My daughter is 16 and going to high school here, and is inundated with offers to get involved with prostitution and drugs. Is there anything that we can do about this to attack this problem of prostitution?
Yes.
Recruiting in our high schools and drug involvement?
I think there is. I've been working on both those issues as Attorney General. In fact, we started in 2005 tackling the methamphetamine problem. We then expanded that to address prescription drug abuse. We've made progress, a great deal of progress in both of those areas. For example, there's now a prescription drug monitoring program in place that we provided the initial money for that makes it much easier to track people who are running around to multiple doctors, collecting large amounts of strong narcotics and then selling them. On the prostitution side, I actually have made human trafficking the key issue for the National Association of Attorneys General this year. And next week, as a matter of fact, we're hosting a national conference on human trafficking, including domestic minor sex trafficking, in order to draw attention to the fact that prostitution is not what Hollywood tells us that it is. It is not Julia Roberts, Pretty Woman, the happy hooker. It is systematic exploitation and enslavement. Over 90% of women who are currently sex workers, as the media likes to call them, desperately want to escape and are trapped. So we have to make the case that prostitution is human trafficking. We have to have stronger law enforcement efforts against promoting prostitution. Several bills have passed in the last 2 legislative sessions which do exactly that, and which also more severely penalize patrons for buying those services. We need to have more services for people who are victims of prostitution. There's only one shelter in the whole region for girls who are brought in off the streets. That needs to change, just like we've expanded services for domestic violence victims and survivors. And all of that is moving forward. By using my presidency of our National Association to focus on human trafficking, we now have 50 states plus the territories focused on this issue, dramatically raising its profile and expanding the work which is being done on it nationally. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rob, given the efficiencies you've achieved in your office, and I mean that sounds absolutely great what you've done. My question is, as governor, how would you accomplish that in the rest of the departments in the state?
If I'm governor, in my first days, I will issue an executive order requiring every agency of state government over which I have control to implement performance management and to use the same system. Now, for unionized employees, there'll have to be some bargaining done. We will bargain it. I do not accept the fact that the Washington Federation of State Employees only wants people to be paid based on seniority without regard to performance. That will be changed, and it will be part of the collective bargaining process. Yes?
So I've been told that the top tax dollar we spend is on education, and then the second one is on jails. We spend billions of dollars putting people in behind bars. We build bigger boxes for people. Do you have any plan for reform? Do you have any plan for... I represent a nonprofit, you guys, that I believe does make a difference in county jails and in changing people's lives, and we've taken money away from any kind of reform. Any hope?
Absolutely. First of all, it is not the second dollar. Out of the $32 billion budget, we do spend a few $1 billion on corrections, but it's been cut more than most parts of the state budget, as you point out.
Along with rehab, correct.
We also do not over-incarcerate in our state. We have one of the lowest rates of incarceration per capita in America. We're very good about using alternatives such as felony, adult drug court, juvenile drug court, family treatment court, etc. We use home monitoring. We have mental health court diversion, etc. We tend to save our correctional capacity for serious violent offenders. I think it's about 70% of people currently incarcerated in the state system are there for violent crimes. So I think we're fairly judicious in how we use those resources.
But I've been told again that 66% of the recurring, the people come back again and again.
Yeah,
They
there is a very
reoffend.
high recidivism rate.
Thank you.
That's
So-
why I support correctional industries. I think it's a good program, give people skills, they can become employed. That's why in my comprehensive methamphetamine bill back in '06, we included a component which expanded drug treatment for meth addicts while they're in prison. We need to do those things, and I'm a fan of what they were doing in Airway Heights along those lines until budget cuts caused them to to cut it back. So you're absolutely right. There are sensible investments we need to make to reduce recidivism. Yes, sir.
Hi. Since we're on the subject of prisons, in Farrakhan versus Gregoire, the court found that we have a problem with systemic racial bias in our criminal justice system. I wanted to know, do you agree with that we have such a problem, and if so, what have you done about it as Attorney General, and what would you do about it as Governor?
We have had a problem. The good news is we've been working on it very, very steadily, thanks to the leadership of the Supreme Court, with support from my office, with support from prosecutors and many others. And so as a consequence, we were able to show in the Farrakhan case dramatic improvements in reducing systemic racial bias in the criminal justice system. In fact, at the time I argued that case in the Ninth Circuit in 2010, we were able to show that Asian Americans and Hispanics or Latinos were actually underrepresented. There were fewer of them in the prison population than are represented in the general population of the state. Unfortunately, the one area where they're still disproportionately overrepresented is among African Americans. And that's a problem that continues to be addressed, for example, with sentencing reform for certain kinds of narcotics crimes. And even there, we were able to show, with statistics from the Department of Corrections, there was a dramatic improvement over the prior about 20 years compared to where we were in 2010. So even there, we're making steady progress. And we should continue to keep a focus on it, because a system which is not fair and unbiased doesn't have the confidence of the people that it serves. We have time for like two more. Here and then over here. Okay.
Our state workers' comp system is completely antiquated and broken. Once you're elected governor, what would be your approach to rehauling our workers' comp program?
We need to open up workers' compensation to competition. I'll put a new management team in there, and they will work hard to improve that agency, but the key is competition from other providers. Even if they're nonprofit co-ops, that would be fine with me, but you need competition. There's a reason that 46 states moved away from a state monopoly and allow competitive provision of industrial insurance. Our near neighbor Oregon did that over a dozen years ago, and they're about to have their first state premium increase in 10 years. They also get their injured workers back to work more than twice as soon as we do. The average injured worker in our state is out for 264 days now. That's the average. In Oregon, it's half that. Yeah, it's less than that. Way under that. Okay, we're out. Basically, we're out of time. So I'm sorry. I'll take the last two. I'm a sucker. So I'll take you, and then I'm going to be really quick. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I believe the education system is very important to win the global competition.
Yes.
We need to put more money into education, but how do you ensure that money is actually going into educating students,
Right.
rather than building administrative?
Excellent question. How do you ensure that if we do put more money into education, it reaches the classroom, it reaches the students, isn't just burned up in administration and overhead? The state is going to be paying much more attention to that going forward as a result of the Supreme Court ruling recently that we're relying too much on local sources of revenue for our schools and not fulfilling the paramount duty of the state to fund education. So I'm guessing that we'll move from 70% of the budget coming from the state to something like 90%, and that the state legislature, OSPI, the governor, we will all be focused on making sure that the increased funding that's coming from the state, while local sources are reduced, is dedicated to reaching the classroom.
Quick question: what percentage of education dollars going into teaching students?
You see different estimates, but it's roughly half actually gets into the classroom. Is what those are the numbers that I see. Okay, you get the last one.
I'm interested in what more you can do for foreclosures and if you're not with the 5 banks that you're talking about.
We are bringing back about $44 million that we will be putting. I have a blue ribbon committee that I'm establishing with assistance from the state legislature and the governor's office. I've invited them to participate. We'll be bringing people in from industry. We'll have a really good brain trust that will think about how we can take that $44 million and use it to the benefit of all homeowners who are distressed. For example, by expanding nonprofit homeownership counseling services, expanding pro bono legal services, and so forth. We also, of course, will be busy overseeing the implementation of the relief for people who are customers of the 5 big banks, so they can access refinancing, loan modifications, even principal reduction in some cases. We believe that all of this will benefit all homeowners because, as you know, foreclosures drive down home values and move more people into jeopardy. By helping to stabilize the real estate market, we think that we'll help keep other people out of trouble who are in it. And by the way, the relief for people who are customers of the 5 big banks will not be limited to people who are in default. We're going to help people who have been making all their payments, but because they're underwater, cannot refinance in order to help them refinance. We think that that's appropriate. People who've been conscientious and who've sacrificed to make their payments ought to get some relief as well. Thank you very much.